Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root, from CardsWire.com, the USA Today NFL Wire site that covers, of course, your Arizona Cardinals, and we're in the middle of our yearly opponent preview series, where I have 14 shows with 14 writers / reporters / analysts that cover the Cardinals' 14 opponents. And in week 2, the Cardinals' season opener, they will take on the Carolina Panthers. They are a frequent opponent, as they either they're playing the NFC South or they end up in the same place in the standings as the Panthers. And for the second year in a row, since the Cardinals are playing the Panthers for a second straight year, Jared Feinberg, one of the contributing writers over at the Panthers Wire, joins me to talk Panthers. Jared, welcome back. I'm glad to have you back on the show, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Good to be back.
So last year was interesting after the Panthers were terrible, and before that the Panthers were terrible again. They did start out the year terribly, as they lose their first 2. They beat the Raiders, but at that point people were like, oh, the Raiders, nope. Then they lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They start off the season 1-7. Then they get a couple of wins with a couple of bad teams, and the Saints and the Giants lose 4 straight, beat the Cardinals. That game, that was an embarrassment of the game of the Cardinals. That was a game they absolutely should not have lost. But Bryce Young started playing well down the stretch. They lose the Bucks, but then win in overtime 44-38 over the Falcons and finish 5-12 in the first season under Dave Canales. What can you tell us about how that 2024 season was? The goods, the bads, all of it.
Oh, yeah. 2024 was a season I definitely won't forget, just because of the chaos of Bryce Young being benched, then coming back a month later because Andy Dalton had an injury from a car accident that would keep him out for a couple weeks. But I think that was a blessing in disguise for Bryce Young, and I think Young's progression as a quarterback was the highlight of the Carolina Panthers this past season, where he was the first 2 weeks of the season compared to what he was in week 18 is complete polar opposites. Bryce Young looked like the quarterback we had all seen at Alabama, where he won the Heisman Trophy, where he came in big in the clutch moments. The 2 best games from Bryce Young during his college career, in my opinion, were his comeback, his 90-something yard drive against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and then the next year against Tennessee in Alabama's close loss to the Volunteers. Those 2 games stand out because they put up, it was the best of Bryce Young. No ways around it. So what I saw from Bryce gave me confidence in what he could become for 2025. We also saw the emergence of Chuba Hubbard as a top running back in the NFL, where he led the Panthers in rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, was essentially the best player on that offense, even as Bryce Young continued to progress. Defensively, it was a you-know-what show. It was it was the worst Panthers defense I had ever seen. I've been a Panthers fan for a long time. And what I saw from that defense week in and week out, you always hope that they could at least hold their own against some opponents. I think they They did so, I believe, against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they kept them in line like all throughout the game. They gave up some big plays, and then they were able to keep the Eagles in check. I think some of that was because of Kellen Moore's indecision making as offensive coordinator there, but most of the season, Carolina's defense was giving up at least 5 yards before contact each game, or something along those lines. Maybe it was something less than that, but it was still very, very bad. Gave up the most points in a single season in NFL history, so they are officially among the worst defenses in league history. And that's something that usually would get your defensive coordinator fired. But Jared Feinberg is going to be sticking around for another year. And I think it right now it might be the right call, because the Panthers want to keep continuity within their organization, within the front office, within the coaching staff. And I think that was important, especially in this new era with general manager Dan Morgan and head coach Dave Canales. So right now you're seeing a team that I think improved in free agency, improved in the draft, and they're set up for potential quick success in 2025, maybe. But it really all depends on Bryce Young. And I'm looking at what that could become this season.
What I find interesting is that Jared Feinberg was, for years, considered one of the bright, young, defensive-minded coordinators in the NFL. They were in Denver. Like, he did really, really well. And I saw Pro Football Network put out rankings pretty recently about the defensive coordinator, and he was the lowest ranked non-rookie defensive coordinator in the NFL, right behind Nick Rallis, which I was like, all right, that's valid.
Yeah,
because the numbers haven't been there. But yeah, the numbers haven't been there. They were bad against they were the worst against, like, teams ran the ball a lot. They gave up the most rushing attempts, the most rushing yards, the most yards per carry. They gave up the most yards, the most points in the NFL. They were the worst in they were both worst in first on third. They had the fewest first downs on offense and gave up the most first downs on defense. They gave up the most passing touchdowns in the NFL. They were third to last in rushing touchdowns allowed. So basically the bright spots, and I remember when Bryce Young got benched, and then when you see Andy Dalton come in and he lit up the scoreboard in his first game, they're like, well, maybe it's not the offense. But then Andy Dalton, as he does, he came back down to earth.
Yep.
And I can tell this is that when Andy Dalton went in, the one thing that he was certainly better at is he would see a read, make the throw. So he was very decisive, and on those things where the first read is there, he made it. And that is where Bryce Young gets in trouble. I saw, like, I haven't watched a lot of Bryce Young, but the first year I watched his rookie season, and I saw him play, it reminded me of Kyler Murray his first year. He wasn't doing his mannerisms, the way he ran. It felt like he had the same style of play as Kyler Murray, just without he didn't have the better results. And so I believe 100% that Bryce Young can be a very good quarterback. He'll be limited in a couple of things, but
yeah,
he's so dynamic. And against the Cardinals had no answer for him whatsoever. A couple of really cool stats about Bryce Young over his last 3 games: through 7 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and rushed for 3 scores. So, and that included the Cardinals.
Sounds
game.
Good. It sounds good. I don't know. For others, that might seem like, I've seen Mahomes do that. I'm like,
Mahomes, and you look at Mahomes' numbers last year. Mahomes was not a good quarterback last year.
He wasn't great.
But he is, like, one thing. He is clutch. He is so clutch. So, like,
yeah,
the defense carried that Chiefs team, but granted, he was throwing to, like, nobody. He was throwing to nobody.
I mean, I will say Mahomes is the most clutch quarterback in the NFL, and that's what makes him great, is how he comes in these big moments. It doesn't matter how the rest of the game went. He just shows up and makes the plays to put the team in positions to win, go to overtime, and then win in an overtime. I mean, that's Mahomes.
Wild.
It's insane.
But yeah, then also, like on the other side of things, defensively, they gave up 30 or more in 4 straight games down the stretch, and in 5 of their last 7. So there were lots of points. There were lots of points scored on them. But that was last season. Coming on next on the Rise of Zero podcast, Mr. Cardinals talk on them. Let's move on as we talk to Jared Feinberg about the Panthers and move on to the offseason free agency of the draft. That's coming on next on Rise of Zero. We're back on the Rise of Zero podcast, Mr. Cardinals talk on the web in our opponent preview show featuring Jared Feinberg of the Panthers Wire as we talk about the Carolina Panthers, whom the Cardinals will face in week 2 in the 2025 season, their home opener. Free agency. They cut to Jadeveon Clowney. They lost a few guys. But is there anybody who they lost that would be considered an impact loss? Because as I'm going down the list, it's not like anyone got rich. No one got a big contract coming off of their year with the Panthers. I think the biggest deal was Xavier Woods, who got a 2-year, $8 million deal. I think that's the biggest money that which understandably so.
He was not great last year.
Understandably so. Like on a 5-12 team that had the worst defense in the NFL and a bad offense as well. Who's going to make money? Who's going to go into free agency and make money off that? But is there anyone that the Panthers going to miss?
I would say Clowney, maybe, but I think the Panthers have shown they are trusting in their talent of their pass rushers. You have Nick Scorton, their 2nd-round pick. You have Pat Jones. You have DJ Wanham. You have young pass rushers in that room that really stand out to me, and it's refreshing to see Carolina have some ceiling in that room, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Princely Omen, I think that's how you say his last name. I just tried to pronounce it right here, right now for the first time.
Omen Milan.
Omen Milan, yes. That's one I'm really excited about for Carolina. Very explosive pass rusher with great bend, who's got a little bit of a pass rush arsenal to him. He's still got some inconsistencies to work on, but he was someone I liked on tape. I had a 2nd-round grade on him coming out of Ole Miss. Have Scorton as a 2nd-round grade as well. I think a high 2nd-round grade on Scorton. So Carolina really, I think it was smart of them to go double dipping at edge rusher in the draft. But back to Clowney, like I get why some fans were upset about releasing Clowney, because after Yemenelin and after Scorton and after Jones and Wanham, the depth in Carolina's edge room isn't entirely great. You got DJ Johnson, who is still yet to live up to that 3rd-round bill. And you got some other depth practice squad free agent type of pass rushers behind them as well. So you're kind of playing devil's advocate there with the edge rusher room. But personally, to me, I think this edge rushing group is going to emerge as a strength by the end of the year, because I see these 2 rookies emerging as being great playmakers in the front 7. I expect that both of them to probably start by the end of the year. I think the 2 of them could be starters. This is a team that hasn't had a true high-end pass rusher since Brian Burns 2 years ago.
And they traded him.
They traded him. But the positive thing about trading Brian Burns was they used the money they would have used to re-sign him, or the money they had used to put him on the franchise tag. They ended up going out and getting Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis up front, which ended up being 2 of Carolina's best signings in recent memory in free agency. So Clowney is really the only one I think you would say might be a concern where Carolina would be missing that veteran leadership. but I think they love the ceiling. They love the youth at edge rusher. So I think they're going to keep going with that.
They, in their moves in free agency, they spend a decent amount of money, like the Cardinals did, on defense. They add defensive tackle Bobby Brown from the Rams, 3-year, $21 million deal. They get linebacker Patrick Jones on a 2-year, $15 million deal. They pay big money to Trayvon Moehrig, safety from the Raiders, 3 years, $51 million. Christian Roseboom, small deal, but productive linebacker. And then additionally, also beefing up on the defensive line up there, Tershawn Wharton, previously from the Chiefs, 3 years, $45.1 million. Those additions, who are expected to, how on paper, you'd say that because the Cardinals did the same thing defensively. This defense should be much better, right?
Mm-hmm. I think it will be. So one thing I've told Panthers fans is that don't expect this defense to automatically be a top 10 defense this year. The goal is to be at best an average group, because there are still some concerns in the secondary, especially at cornerback, especially I would say at safety next to Trayvon Moehrig. I think the Panthers have some trust and maybe some intrigue in Lathan Ransom, one of their day 3 draft picks at safety. Damani Richardson could be a possibility as well, but there's still a little bit of an unknown there. Linebacker, I think, is a concern for Carolina, not having, and also the lack of a true high-end pass rusher. Like, sure, there is definitely intrigue with Jones and Wanham and the rookies, but other than that, it's more projection and what they showed on film, which I liked what I saw on film. These are sufficient level starters. But what the Panthers did in the trenches gives me encouragement. Derek Brown returns after tearing his meniscus week 1. I don't think Panther fans really grasp how important of a sign or how important of a loss that was for the rest of the year. Would the Panthers' run defense be any better? Maybe not, but it might just be a little bit better last year had Brown been healthy the whole year. Joining Brown is, of course, Tershawn Wharton. You have Bobby Brown III from LA, who's a great nose tackle, versatile nose tackle. So have Shy Tuttle, a veteran. You have Cam Jackson, who they drafted as a developmental nose tackle. They also have A'Shawn Robinson, a sufficient level starter as well at defensive tackle. So this is a much improved defensive line. This defense overall has improved. One player, I think the player I'm most excited about defensively is Trayvon Moehrig. I think he can be a game changer for this defense. He has continued to ascend each year during his time in Las Vegas. And people will see the PFF grade for his coverage, his coverage grade on PFF. They're like, oh, well, he's not really great in coverage. But he's disciplined in coverage. He doesn't make the elite ball skill plays. Like, he just does his job. And that's what I appreciate about him. He can come down, defend the run in the box, or come down the alley from a single high overhang look. He can come down, play big nickel. He can do a lot of stuff for this defense. He is the perfect Ejiro Evero safety. He is the guy that Evero basically had in Denver when he had Justin Simmons. Justin Simmons was incredible under Evero. So I see Moehrig playing that same role. There's not really a role he can't do. So I'm really excited to see what Moehrig can do for that secondary and how he could transform this defense.
And then we go to the draft, and obviously they believe in big receivers after taking Xavier Legette last year. They used their first round pick number 8 overall, Ted McMillan out of the University of Arizona, that school down south that I do not like talking about. But Ted McMillan is that guy. He gets the ball, go get ball. He's athletic enough, but is that the kind of the idea? Because the Cardinals also like longer receivers. Is you give Bryce Young, big targets on the outside. Leggett on one side, and then Ted McMillan on the other side.
Yeah, they love their big receivers. They really do. And the drafting of McMillan and Leggett kind of showed they want those big body types, but both of those receivers, I think, offer a different skill set. I think Leggett kind of brings that run after catch ability because he's so explosive after the catch. And I think people forget how explosive he was at South Carolina. Like, he showed great flashes of second level, third level acceleration where he's just splitting defenders and running right by him. McMillan is not going to do that. I don't think he has the elite speed or the elite athleticism that you want from a high-end wide receiver prospect. And I had some reservations on McMillan coming out of Arizona. I had a preference more so in skill set when it came to the draft prospects during that time. I had higher grades on Matthew Golden and Emeka Egbuka, respectively, but that's just who I preferred in terms of skill sets overall. I think McMillan's a great player. I think he was a good selection for Carolina. He has the potential to be a great wide receiver in this league and an elite playmaker for Carolina. And after rewatching his tape, the thing that I've noticed was he runs routes differently than you want others to. You know, he knows where to be. He knows where to hit his landmarks, but it's not this nuanced, this very detailed route running where you have to put your foot at this hash mark, or like you have to stop on a dime and turn or break. It's not exactly like that. But McMillan can be just so overwhelming with his size, and he moves so well for someone his size. His ball skills are arguably the best in the entire draft, from the entire draft outside of Travis Hunter. So McMillan gives Carolina another playmaker. I'm really excited about McMillan for this upcoming season. I temper my expectations. I'm not expecting high-end wide receiver one numbers. I'm expecting rookie numbers, maybe 60 plus catches, 900 plus yards, 7 plus touchdowns. That's a great rookie season. I would take that any day. I would take that any year. Any year from a rookie, I'd take that. One receiver from this draft class I want to mention is Jimmy Horn, Shador Sanders' deep threat weapon at Colorado. He's someone I think could be a game changer for Carolina down the road. He has a skill set that Carolina lacks or has lacked, and I think Carolina could utilize him on special teams as a return man, but also utilize him as a gadget player. I think that's what they're going to start him out as. But I think once they start seeing progression from Horn, they'll start putting him on the field more as that deep threat down the field. And someone that can really open up the offense for Carolina. So Carolina, frankly, had one of the better drafts of any team in the league, in my opinion. Just based on what their roles could be down the line.
Yeah, you mentioned Nick Scoughton before, round 2, Princely Umamelan out of Mississippi in round 3. You anticipate that both those guys will either be starters / rotational, like part of the regular defensive rotation.
For sure. Absolutely. These are two rushers that bring different skill sets for Carolina on defense, but it's skill sets that Carolina will love to have down the line. These are going to be impactful, quality starters for Carolina, probably by the end of their second year, start of their third year. I'm really high on both of these pass rushers. I know some people that had Scoughton as the number 2 pass rusher in this draft. Scoughton, I think his lack of production last year compared to his days at Purdue were because of the defense he was playing in and all the rules that defensive
Texas
front
A&M
had. Yeah,
ruins production for pass rushers.
R.I.P. Shamar Stewart, man. I don't want to get into go fully into that, but let's just say I need to have a conversation with Mike Elko real quick about why aren't you letting these guys just get loose and be high-end pass rushers? Because Gordon was playing heavier last year compared to what he was um at at Purdue. At Purdue, I think he was about 255, 265. He was playing at 280, 285 at A&M. So they wanted him to be heavier so he can be a better run defender. I think he improved as a run defender. I think 2023 showcased his best as a pass rusher. And I think Carolina will be getting that from Scourton.
The day 3 picks, running back Trevor Etienne out of Georgia, Umenthan Lathan Ransom, Ohio State safety Cam Jackson, defensive lineman out of Florida, Mitchell Evans, tight end out of Notre Dame, and you mentioned Jimmy Horn. Any of those day 3 guys, do you anticipate, you already mentioned Horn, do you anticipate any of those guys, Etienne, Ransom, Jackson, Evans, having any sort of role as a rookie?
I think Ransom will have a role in this defense if the Panthers choose not to sign another safety before training camp or around training camp. I know they have interest in Blackman. It's been reported as far back as start training camp, or not start training camp, start free agency, when they had Blackman in for a visit. Panthers beat has even confirmed in pieces over the last couple of months where Panthers have interest in Blackman. It's no secret. So it's probably a matter. It's not a matter of if, but when the Panthers sign Blackman at this point. But they'll probably have competition for Blackman for teams that still need a safety out there. So I personally, for me, I'd like to see a deal get done sooner than later. Just kind of put that to ease and give Carolina a true single high defender that can bring more value and allow for more 3 safety rotations, where Ransom is playing a decent amount this upcoming season. So I think Ransom's definitely going to see time on the field. Trevor Etienne will see time on the field. I think his role is going to be more in the return game. Mitchell Evans is someone I like long term, someone that could be a potential starter. I could see him getting playing time if Tommy Tremble is not able to stay healthy enough again this year. Looking down the board, overall, I see a way where a lot of these rookies get on the field for some type of role. I think Jackson's really the only one that's like, okay, he's probably going to be buried on the depth chart in Carolina, but if they need him in a pinch, he can probably do so. He's really good at being a 1-gap, 2-gap defender that has long arms, can lock out, shed blocks pretty well. So there is some value there early on in his career for Jackson, but he's someone that I think Carolina's going to be patient with, develop, work with him, and maybe eventually he becomes a starter on this defense alongside Brown and or Derek Brown, excuse me, and Bobby Brown. I got to be careful to specify which Brown I'm talking about because it's bitten me in the butt a couple times when I've posted on X, and I'm just like, oh, I meant Derek Brown. My apologies. Bobby Brown is no Derek Brown, but he's still good. But overall, I like this rookie class. I think it's going to be impactful in the long run. There's definitely some interesting aspects of this group. I think Carolina really wanted to draft a linebacker at some point. I think they were just either out of range of one, aka Carson Schlesinger, or they just didn't have warm, fuzzy feelings with the linebacker class, which is fair. I don't think really anyone else did, to be honest.
Coming on next on the Res Receiver podcast, special Cardinals talk about. Let's move on and talk about what to expect in 2025 for the Panthers. That's coming on next on Res Red. We're back on the Res Red podcast, special Cardinals talk on the web, talking to Jared Feinberg over at the Panthers Wire as we look at the Carolina Panthers, whom the Cardinals play in week 2. Looking at their schedule, it is not like it's a mix of difficult, but not difficult opponents necessarily to start things off. The Panthers play 3 of their first 4 games on the road. They open up on the road against Jacksonville. They go to Arizona. Then they're at home against Atlanta in week 3 for their home opener. On the road against the Patriots. Then at home against Miami and Dallas. On the road against the Jets. At home against the Bills. Away against the Packers. Home against the Saints. At the Falcons. At the Niners. Home against the Rams in the bye week. But their end of the season, that is a challenge as they play the Rams. They have the bye week to play the Saints. They're supposed to be a dumpster fire. They play the 4-time defending NFC South champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers twice in the final 3 weeks. And sandwiched in between there are the Seattle Seahawks at home in week 17, who won 10 games last year under Mike McDonald. How do you see this season going for Carolina?
I think 8 wins should be the expectation with Carolina this year. I think they doubled up in wins from 2023 to 2024. 2 wins to 5 wins. Okay, that's a 3-win increase. I'm expecting another 3-win increase this year. And by week 14, I'm expecting them to be at least competing for a division title. I think that should be the expectation. You are competing for a championship in December. For a divisional championship, the NFC South in December. That should be the goal this year. I think they're on a similar trajectory as Arizona, where they're kind of like a year behind Arizona in their growth.
I see them looking like what Arizona was last year. So they were abjectly terrible on defense in 2023. They add some veterans, so they bring in Justin Jones, they bring in Bilal Nichols, and it brings the floor up. They're still not good. They get hurt and they go through things, but the offense was effective, and the Cardinals were last year, by all means, a perfectly mediocre team because aside from the Panthers, like all their losses were to playoff teams, double-digit win teams, and the Panthers. The Panthers was the one game where you're like, that was the game that they had no excuse losing. And that was basically what defined the end of the season for them. And, the Panthers kind of look like on that trajectory that they should be the definition of mid is like the young people. They're mid and should beat the lesser teams and should struggle against the tougher teams.
And I think they're going to have a bit of a challenge against Jacksonville week 1. I think that's going to be an opponent that have a new coaching staff. Liam Cohen's one of the more creative offensive coordinator, or one of the creative offensive minds in the league. And you also have a defense that has a new defensive coordinator and Anthony Campanelli. They have Trevor Lawrence, who I'm very high on as a quarterback. I think their roster in general improved. They have Travis Hunter now. I mean, this is a team that could be a tough week 1 outing. 3 of the first 4 games on the road for Carolina, that's tough. That's tough for any team. But I do think that will help them in the long run, especially as they get further into the season, where 2 of their 4 final games are at home against Tampa Bay and Seattle. Seattle's supposed to be a playoff contender. Tampa Bay is supposed to be the favorite to win the NFC South. Like, you need to have... The thing is, I think if Carolina has the same record as Arizona did last year, they were 7-7 at the end of the year, or around week 14, week 15.
Yeah. Then they end up at 8-9. They ended up 8-9.
I think if Carolina is in that position and they lose that, hey, they lost the game they shouldn't have lost. In that scenario, like, there's a chance Seattle could be bad because Sam Darnold at quarterback and their offensive line. A very real possibility. If that's the case and they lose that game with a chance of probably getting into the postseason on the line, that's not going to go over well for fans, but I think when you look at it in the long run, this season is what you wanted to see from the Carolina Panthers. Now, the fan in me wants to see this team in the postseason this year.
Oh yeah,
I of course. this team, I feel like if they had an average defense last year, they win 8 games, maybe 9 games. They might get into the playoffs as a wild card team if they had an average defense last year, which is insane and kind of goes to show how good Bryce Young was towards the end of last year.
Yeah.
So that tells me, as someone observing the Panthers and also as a fan, like, hey, this team could be something legit in 2025. But again, Bryce Young has to show up. Bryce Young has to continue to perform like he did. And if he continues to do that, I think he's a top 10 quarterback in this league. I feel very confident in that.
And as you look at that week 2 game on the road against the Cardinals, how do Panthers fans view that game? Do they view that game as that's a tough one? That's a likely loss? Is it a should win, or is it toss up, should win, or yeah, we got this type game?
I think it's a toss up. I think they understand that Arizona is ascending as a team. Defense is getting better. Offense is good. I think Arizona's offense is pretty fun. And I'm about to ask you a question about Kyler Murray in a second. Arizona's a team that I think could be a formidable team next year if Kyler Murray becomes the quarterback fans have been envisioning him to be for years since being selected number 1 overall. Jess, for you, what does Kyler Murray need to do to become that type of quarterback where you can win games because of him, where he's not putting you in bad positions like he did at points against Carolina last year with that rough interception late in the game last year?
Well, honestly, I think that like he does, his inconsistency from game to game is rough. And so if he can harness the great for half the games and then the inconsistent, because like at his worst, he's a league average at his worst, he's a league average quarterback.
Yep.
But I point to look at when he was playing his absolute best football. Mm-hmm. That was 2021. You look at the first half of 2021, he was looking like an MVP, but you know what he had that year that helped him look like an MVP? A defense that we hoped was average was very good.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really good for much of the year. And then the final 7 games, he threw 8 of his 11 interceptions in the final 7 games. And you look at those turnovers, he was forcing things and making decisions because the defense could not be counted. They were either behind and having to rally, or they needed to get a score so that the defense didn't let. The defense last year just wasn't going to. If he has a defense that allows him to play from ahead, you will see 2021 Kyler Murray.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is like, if you get, because he has the playmakers, they don't, and we'll have to wait and see schematically. We'll have to see schematically. I think Drew Petzing, fantastic in the run game. He does great things with the run game and the short passing game with the running backs and the tight ends. Can he do enough design-wise to get dynamic play from Marvin Harrison Jr.? And if he does, if he proves that was just rookie stuff, and I think it's going to be a fun year, and pair that with it. Like I look at this Cardinals team. They were an 8-win team last year with a below average defense.
Mm-hmm.
A below, and like they were a scrappy, disciplined group. But
yes, that's what stood out to me with Arizona.
But the problem was they couldn't get off the field. They did not get to the quarterback, and they didn't force turnovers. But they were scrappy, they were hard-nosed, they were disciplined, and so they looked better than they were. And then they would just wear down. This year, where they've significantly upgraded the edge, they significantly upgraded the defensive interior, that should be different. They should be a good above average defense, and with an above average defense and the offense playing it they did last year, I think you're going to see Kyler flourish. And I think that's what it is that I like to make X guys, but there are reasons why he hasn't taken the next step. 2019, 2020, 2021, he ascended. 2022, that was the garbage year. Okay, he wasn't good. There was a lot of the team was terrible. Everything failed that year. He tears his ACL. 2023, he plays the second half of the season. It's a terrible team. He plays average. He has perfectly, like, in terms of those metrics, he was right there, like DVOA 0. That's how his play was in 2023. Last year, he was better. There were moments, there were games, and then at the end of the year, things fell apart. The defense got worse.
Yeah.
And then he turned the ball over. There were a couple of unlucky throws, and there were a couple of things that some of it was unlucky, but there were very rarely, like, of those 8 interceptions, I think only one of them was a bad decision. There were some bad situations, like it was a 4th down. You have to throw the ball. You can't not throw the ball on 4th down.
Yeah.
You can't not throw the ball. One, like he's trying to throw it away, and Byron Murphy made a really good catch on the sideline of it, and he didn't quite get it out of it. Kyler is a very good. He's not. You know what I think of Kyler? It's an interesting thing. Some of the greatest quarterbacks elevate their teammates. He's not so much a teammate elevator as he is a put the team on his shoulders hero type player. And so he needs, like, he's so dynamic, but he does need the right stuff around him, at least playing at a competent level. And if the defense is not playing at a competent level, it's really hard to be great.
But personally, for me, I don't think Kyler's ever going to be that top tier quarterback where he's in the conversation with Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, like that. I think that at this point, it's kind of unrealistic, though he does have talent to kind of get there.
Well, like, you've always, like, the top 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks, they're there, and then like 5 through 13, that goes year to year.
Yeah,
it's like who's having the better year, and Kyler is in that 5 to 13. It's just, is he going to be more 5 this year or more 13?
Yeah. So for me, that's kind of where the toss up is, because which Kyler Murray are you going to get in that game? And the Panthers and the Cardinals haven't beaten the Panthers in, I don't know how long it's been. I feel like Carolina's always had success against Arizona. Maybe this is the year that changes. But I think it's important for Carol. This is going to be an important. I think whatever happens against Jacksonville, they lose that game, week 2 becomes a must win. If they win against Jacksonville, I think there's less pressure to get the job done in Arizona. Because if you lose in Arizona, but you won your season opener on the road in Jacksonville, that's like, okay, got the home opener win, saw what this team could be. Let's see what happens if they lose. If they lose, we know what they need to improve on. But I think Carolina needs to avoid being in a 2-hole or maybe even a 1-3 hole in the first 4 weeks of the season. Because then you're kind of approaching, is Canales it? What's going on with Bryce Young? Is Evero on his way out? Like, fans will start having those questions. But personally, to me, that the week 2 game against Arizona is a toss-up. I think it's because of Kyler Murray and what he can become and what he could be this upcoming season. Because I think the Cardinals are a well-rounded team. I think they have the talent to be a postseason team this year. I don't know if they get the high-end version of Kyler Murray, they're challenging in Los Angeles for the division title. If they get a slightly better Kyler Murray, I think they're a wild card team. If they get the average Kyler Murray, I think they kind of stall out. So that's my thing with Arizona, just from the outside looking in. But I'm excited for this week 2 matchup. That's going to be fun. 4:05 p.m. Eastern time here in North Carolina on the East Coast. 105 I assume that's the right time.
Yep.
West Coast time. Yep. Cool. I got it right. Let's go. Um, look, I have a sister that lives in Seattle, so sometimes I get the hours mixed up, and I text her at like, if I text her at 6 a.m., it's like 3 a.m. and she's fast asleep. I'm like, crap. She probably won't even read it for the whole day. But yeah, that Arizona game I'm looking forward to. And I'm likely going to be in Jacksonville for that game. Covering that game for Jags on SI. So that should be an interesting game to kind of look forward to as well for Carolina. But looking at Carolina's schedule, it's truly a mixture of, okay, they have some teams they could definitely beat. Then there's a challenging team kind of mixed in there. And they're like, oh, that's going to be challenging. But then the next week they'll have like a New Orleans after their road trip against Green Bay, and then they'll face Atlanta on the road the next week. And then they have 2 weeks against San Francisco and Los Angeles. And then they come off the bye against New Orleans within a 3-game stretch of Tampa Bay twice and then Seattle at home. So, it's a very unique schedule for Carolina. I don't think there's a true, like, oh my God, this is going to be such a very tough stretch ordeal. Maybe the first 4 weeks, but then after that, it's like, that's fine. It's really fine. Some winnable games, some games I'm concerned about. Buffalo, Los Angeles, probably Tampa Bay both times, because I think Tampa Bay is going to be really good this year. I think they're going to be fine without Liam. But yeah, this Panther schedule, it looks favorable to them if they want to continue to progress. I think they get 8 wins, maybe 9, maybe 10, if Bryce Young becomes that top 10 quarterback that we all expect him to be, and that defense becomes an average unit. If that's the case, I think this is a 10-win team.
Yeah, and I think I see the Panthers as a 7 to 10 win team, like the 7-win floor, 10-win ceiling. They're going to go through some tough times. They're going to be better than they were last year, but not. I think they'll be very much like how the Cardinals were last year, and maybe you'll hit a point in the season where you're like, oh, they could do it, and then they show the colors and they falter down the stretch. But yeah, this will be a fun game. It's for both teams. It's an important game for the Cardinals. That's a game that if they've made progress. Their home opener against a team that should be beneath them in their progress, they should win that game. For the Panthers, for them to show the progress they're making, a team that is not yet proven to be a playoff type team, they need to win that game. So it'll be an interesting even matchup, I believe, and exciting too, because that Kyler versus Bryce Young last one, that was electric. Too bad Cardinals couldn't stop Bryce Young or Chuba Hubbard. That was a bummer. So with that is Jared Feinberg. You can find him on a lot of spots. You can find him on Panthers Wire. He mentioned Jags on SI. He's on Twitter, X, as J-Rod NFL Draft as well. Anywhere else, Jared, that the Cardinals fans can find you?
You can also find me on Blue Sky. I post somewhat regularly on there, kind of like the Twitter safe haven, I guess, or X safe haven. But I post sometimes on Blue Sky. I'll be posting more on there throughout the season. You can find me on there. I am on Threads, but I haven't posted on there since March. So do as you wish with that.
There's too much.
There's too many. There's way too many. I'm just sticking with X. I don't care all the other BS going on with X. Just sticking with X. It's fine. Everything's fine. But yes, you can find me on those social media accounts if you like to be very online and like sometimes I tend to be. So you can find me at J-Rod NFL Draft on those platforms as well.
All right. Thank you, Jared, for your time. That will wrap up this edition of the show. And coming up in the next couple of days, you'll get another opponent preview. We've got 14. I think it's going to be 14 in 14 days. And then Seth and I will be back for training camp previews. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, rise up, See Red.
Rise up! Rise!